Also tonight, a new Texas Southern University poll shows the U.S. Senate race in Texas may be tighter than expected. Republican Senator John Cornyn leads Democrat James Talarico by 1 point in a hypothetical matchup. The poll also shows Talarico tied with Ken Paxton if Paxton becomes a GOP nominee. Paxton and Cornyn are in a runoff for the nomination. Early voting for the runoff started today.
Let's bring in Mark Jones now. Mark is a political science professor with Rice University. Mark, thank you for being here.
No, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Tell us, how significant is it that a Democrat is within the margin of error in such a high-profile Texas race?
Well, I think it indicates a couple of things. One, Democrats have a very strong candidate in James Talarico. Two, the Republicans have been engaged in a very bloody primary where whoever's going to emerge as the victor on May 26th is going to emerge weaker than would have been the case with a more unified party. And three, Donald Trump is very unpopular. His approval ratings keep falling. And when that occurs, he's dragging down Republican candidates across the country. You put those three factors together, and it's a perfect storm here in Texas that could potentially result in Democrats winning a statewide race for the first time since 1994.
Okay, so I'm glad you brought that up. For all the points that you just brought up, we've heard talk of a blue wave in red Texas for years. Do the numbers suggest Talarico could be a tipping point?
That's the potential. I remember the last time that Democrats came close to winning a statewide race in Texas was back in 2018 when Beto O'Rourke really was a very strong candidate. He surprised Republicans, and Donald Trump's low approval ratings drug them down. This time around, Trump's approval ratings are much lower than where they were back in 2018, and so he's more of a net liability for Republicans. Now, we do want to caution, and I think with this survey is a snapshot of where things are today, after Republicans have spent months and over $100 million beating up on each other. We will pivot in November to a different scenario where Republicans will turn their guns on James Talarico through a host of negative attack ads. So Talarico's low approval ratings may suffer. But all the same, I think this is pointing to a fall where Democrats will have a fighting chance of winning a statewide race for the first time in more than 30 years.
Okay, you mentioned attack ads. What should we watch also for between now and Election Day that could shift these numbers? And despite President Trump's lower approval ratings, what effect or impact would an endorsement from him have on this race?
Well, so while Donald Trump's approval ratings among statewide voters are negative, that he's underwater, he still is overwhelmingly popular among the people who will vote in this Republican primary, with an approval rating up in the 75 to 80% range. If Trump were to endorse either Paxton or Cornyn between now and May 26th, that could potentially tilt the balance in favor of that candidate. In fact, I would say if Trump were to endorse one of the two candidates today, that would perhaps seal the deal for them on May 26th. However, every day that passes is another day that people vote early. And if the president doesn't endorse soon, even the impact of that endorsement would be much more muted than would have been the case had it been made prior to the start of early voting.
The president has decided not to do anything, at least in the runoff. Mark Jones, political science professor at Rice University. Thank you, sir.
As we said, this poll comes as early voting begins for the primary runoffs. If you need a rundown of all the races, polling locations, and more, simply text the word VOTE to 713-526-1111, and we'll text you back a link to the KHU 11 voter guide.